Welcome to Best in Class. I'm your host, AJ Madden. I help successful individuals and organizations become best in class. Our incredible guest today is Dr. Jason Selk, one of the top performance coaches in the United States, with dozens of professional athletes, Olympians, and Fortune 100 executives and organizations as his clients. His clients include companies such as Merrill Lynch, Bacardi, and Enterprise Rent-A-Car. As the director of mental training for the Major League Baseball's St. Louis Cardinals, Dr. Selk helped the team win 2 World Series championships in 2006 and 2011. He is a regular contributor to Forbes, ABC, CBS, ESPN, and NBC, and has been featured in USA Today, Men's Health, Muscle and Fitness, Inc., and Self magazines. A licensed mental health professional, Dr. Selk earned his doctorate in counseling and sports psychology at the University of Missouri. His latest book, Relentless Solution Focus, has hit the bestseller list multiple times. His earlier book, Executive Toughness, was ranked as one of the best career development books ever published by Book Authority. Dr. Selk, welcome to Best in Class.
AJ, I'm so glad to be with you, my friend. Thanks for having me.
Honored to have you. And for everyone listening, I want to start off with this. I believe Dr. Selk is the #1 expert in the world on success and performance. And you're going to see why in about the next 25 minutes. And I can say that because I've had a lot of experience. I've learned a lot from Dr. Selk, and I've applied pretty much all his teachings to great success myself. But what Jason does that's very unique is that he combines science and deep study of the highest performers in the world. And he breaks it down. He makes the complex simple for us to understand what they do based on science and real world experience. So thanks for being here again, Dr. Selk.
Now, again, AJ, I appreciate the kind words. Means a lot coming from you.
Yes, sir. Honored to have you here. If you're ready to jump in, we can talk about some of your key methodology. Can we start with the definition of mental toughness?
Okay, so right out of the gates, I have had over the years many definitions of mental toughness, and I don't want to put any one or any definition in a box on this one, but I think the one I come back to more than any is the mind's ability to focus on solutions, especially in the face of adversity.
Oh, beautiful. Can you talk about Relentless Solution Focus?
Yeah, it's the latest book that I wrote with my colleague, Dr. Ellen Reed. I think we did a really nice job with it. And, again, you mentioned that one of the things I do a decent job of is trying to simplify science and patterns of success. I think we did a really nice job of trying to take a very complicated subject and simplify it. But I would tell you about Relentless Solution Focus, or RSF, as a lot of people now refer to it. RSF, in my experience, and again, I've been really, really fortunate the last 20, 25 years to literally be able to work with and study some of the most successful athletes, coaches, business people, people in entertainment industry, you name it. I've been fortunate enough to really get out there and work with so many different people at this point, and so many of them at the highest level of performance. And I'm always looking for patterns. I'm always kind of looking for, okay, what are those common traits that those who are most successful share? And RSF, Relentless Solution Focus, is the single, what I have found to be the single most impactful or powerful trait of those who are most successful. And it's really, there's no rocket science behind this. It is, I'll give you the definition of RSF: the mind's ability to focus on solutions within 60 seconds of recognizing that the mind is focused on problems or adversity. Or another definition, replacing all negative or problem-focused thought with solution-focused thinking within 60 seconds. See, AJ, that's such an important piece of the puzzle. Most people don't understand. And I identified this really early in my career. I was so lucky. I was, a new therapist, and I was working with a couple. They came into my office for marriage counseling. And I remember they were both physicians. They'd been married for 30 plus years at that point in time, living in separate bedrooms for 10 years. Okay. But, I'm young hot shot, or so I thought. And I thought, okay, I'll have them back in the same bedroom in no time. And they come in my office, and just like any young therapist is trained to do, I ask them about their problems, and it's called the ABCs of communication. You teach people to say, I feel when you in this situation. Well, if you do what I was, and just like every other therapist in training was instructed to do, get them to talk about their problems, I guarantee you what's going to happen is World War II is going to break out. And that's exactly what happened in that therapy office, that I asked them to start talking about their problems. And I didn't really have the techniques or tools to control those conversations. Nobody prepared me for what really was going to happen. And like I said, it broke out into really a huge fight. And they left the office after that first session. And I remember thinking, well, if my clients come in with X number of problems, and then they leave and they have X plus number of problems, I'm probably not going to make it very long in this business. So I started to do a little of my own research. I wanted to know what science actually existed on this idea of talk about your problems and it will naturally lead you to solutions. Well, as you might guess, AJ, there is absolutely zero empirical evidence anywhere to support that. And you got still to this day therapists being trained to do it this way, but there's no science behind it. And I would just tell you from a practical standpoint, it doesn't work. It makes things worse. And if you understand the real problem with the human brain, remember, our brains are built to focus on problems. Hundreds of years ago, it's what kept us alive. It's PCT, problem-centric thinking. It's built into all of us. It's not mental weakness, it's mental normalness. Unfortunately, these days, now that we live in this very safe time period, it's so counterproductive for health, happiness, and performance. And so RSF, Relentless Solution Focus, is really just the antithesis or the antidote or the opposite, if you will, of that normal PCT tendency. Here's the good news. Last thing I'll say about this, AJ, is good news is, although biologically that PCT tendency is built into all of us can train our brains so that PCT becomes somewhat abnormal and RSF becomes normal. You want to think about the brain like you would any other muscle, a bicep, for example. When I'm born, my bicep is weak, but if I do the right exercises, the bicep can't help from becoming strong and efficient and effective. Same is true for the brain. Most people just have never been instructed on how do you actually train your brain to think about solutions instead of what will come totally normal, which are those problems. And in doing so, creating that relentless solution focused mindset, you will give yourself a distinct, a measurable, a significant advantage over the people you compete against, over what normal is even for yourself. So that's RSF.
Oh, thanks for the brilliant explanation and expanding on that. And that is the Relentless Solution Focused book. Out of the hundreds of books I've personally read on performance, is right up there at the very, very top in terms of usefulness, personally and professionally. So if you're listening to this right now, pick yourself up a copy of this book, because there will be many things in there that can be absolutely life-changing beyond just RSF, because Dr. Selk packs even more into this, the mental workout, the success log. There's a lot of tools in there beyond RSF. But if it was just RSF, it'd be worth its, times 100 what you'll pay for it. If you lead an organization, if you're an owner or manager, pick up a copy for yourself and pick up a copy for every one of your team members. You will, not only will you not regret it, you'll probably be sending Dr. Selk thank you letters for writing the book. And all you have to do is go look on Amazon and look at the reviews. Don't take my word for it. I'm not getting paid to say this. I've read it multiple times. It's a life changer. I've gifted it to many people as well, clients, family, and friends. It's a game changer. So thank you for writing this book. And that was a great explanation of RSF, and you'll see a lot more in the book. Now, in terms of, you talk about confidence is the number one variable affecting a person's performance. Can you talk about confidence and how the most effective thinkers and performers based on science are thinking, what am I doing well? What can I do to improve? How can I improve it?
Yeah. So again, that's science that you really can't argue when you're talking about self-confidence is the number one variable for all human performance. And I would tell you, the biggest issue is self-evaluation. You know, I've had so many discussions with thought leaders, people I respect, you know, trying to figure out, okay, in your opinion, what's the number one characteristic of those who are most successful? And the self-evaluation is a real theme. However, the normal way to evaluate is really counterproductive because normal evaluation destroys self-confidence. How many of you can relate to this? You do 100 things right, one thing less than perfect. When you evaluate, when you think about your day, what are you thinking about? You know, and most people, I don't need to see faces of people listening to this. I know what most people do, even me. You know, I just did a presentation yesterday in North Carolina, and presentation I thought was really pretty solid, but I got in the car after the presentation, and sure enough, first thing that popped into my head was my watch was 4 minutes slow, and that's ridiculous. I'm preach about starting and finishing on time, and it's a very viable excuse, but it's an excuse nonetheless. I had a watch on that was 4 minutes slow, and so I ran 6 minutes over the presentation, and when I got in the car, that's all I wanted to think about was, okay, what the heck's wrong with me? How could I let that thing go long? How could I have a watch? It's 4 minutes slow. So again, the normal brain wants to overlook all the good things you do and zero in on the imperfections. That level of that type of self-evaluation, think about it. What's that going to do to your self-confidence? With training, we can learn to evaluate in a much more effective manner. And it's a simple shift. So again, you got two characteristics of normal self-evaluation. Characteristic number one, you overlook the good stuff you do. Characteristic number two, you zero in on the imperfections. What we want to develop, and it's, you know, again, I write about this in the book RSF, but I think I write about this in all 5 of my books. Effective evaluation, or what we call the performance mindset, or the RSF mindset, or type of self-evaluation. 2 characteristics. One, just start. Always force yourself with evaluation, especially self, but really evaluation of anything. Always start with what's good. And I like people to think about what are 3 things you did well before you get to think about anything that's not where you wanted it to be. So the 2 characteristics, start with your done wells. And I like 3. Come up with 3 things you did well. So again, as I got in that vehicle yesterday after doing the speech, my mind wanted to go to running long on time. Instead, I said, no, come on, screw that plan. What did I do well? You know, I had great energy. I did really nail the content. And I even showed up a little bit early and gave the person putting the guy that owned the company, I gave a little extra time to him. I think that he very much appreciated that. Okay, so always start with your done wells. And then the second part, don't look at what you screwed up. Identify one thing you can do to make it better. And just like for me, I know what I'm going to do. I will never again start a presentation trusting my watch. I'm going to check the phone, make sure my watch and the phone are at the same time. And typically I like to be a couple minutes early with the watch, but that's kind of between me and me. Anyway, self-evaluation, typically it's absolutely counterproductive to self-confidence. With a couple of small little adjustments, zero in on what you do well first, and then what do you want to improve? That self-evaluation actually feeds and nourishes your self-confidence. And again, self-confidence, number one variable for all human performance. It's important to nourish that self-confidence.
Oh, beautiful. And in Relentless Solution Focus, the book, Dr. Selk lays out the success log, which is a daily practice of writing these 3 things out that you did well, one thing you did better, and then rating yourself on RSF. It's a very useful practice that I do pretty much every day. And it just reminds you.
Well, and AJ, let me say something, because here's a really important piece of the puzzle. I'm going to give you a quote. Now, it's actually, I think, from Greek philosophy, and the Navy SEALs have kind of taken it and said that it's theirs. And I'm not going to fight with the Navy SEALs, trust me. But the quote is this. Let me make sure I get it correct. Under pressure, a person does not rise to the occasion, but rather they sink to the level of their training. Okay, and you know my work well enough. I am not a pep talk person. I am a training person. Now, this podcast easily could be looked at as pep talk, but don't think that just hearing the words, you're now moving forward, going to be able to, in a normal situation, focus on the good stuff you do and then zero in on what you want to improve, as opposed to the kind of normal way of, overlooking the good and then zeroing in on what you screwed up on. You got to train your brain to do it. There must be some training, and the exercise. Remember, I gave you the kind of analogy or the metaphor of the bicep. The training mechanism is, and I tell you, if you did this 3 days a week, just answer those 3 questions on a regular basis. What did I do well today? Come up with 3 things. What's one thing I want to improve tomorrow? What's one action step I can take to make the improvement? See, it's because I do those success logs on a daily basis that when I got in the car yesterday, my mind was able to identify, I'm not going to zero in on how bad I was in that talk. I'm going to zero in on first what I do well and what do I want to improve. But it wouldn't have happened, I promise you. If somebody would give me a pep talk, no matter how many times I hear the pep talk, unless I do the training, you don't create the neural pathways, the common new way of thinking that you create by answering those questions, unless you're doing the training itself. So you don't look in. I think most people make a huge mistake when it comes to mental toughness and high level performance. It's not a pep talk, folks. We have, in our country today, we have an abundance of information, but a scarcity of action. People know more knowledge and information now than ever. Problem is, they're not really doing anything with it, or as much as they could or should with it. So I encourage people, hey, look, really look for those people that you trust, and then try to take as little information as you can, turn it into action, and then maybe go back for information, but get it into action first. If I was going to encourage anybody action, write down on paper the answer to these 3 questions at least 3 days a week. What are 3 things I did well previous 24 hours? It's one thing I want to improve in the upcoming 24 hours. What's one action step I can take to make the improvement? You do that, and you're training your brain so that when you are in pressure, when you do need to perform in the right way in terms of self-evaluation, that training is going to kick in, and you're going to force yourself to quit beating yourself up over your one imperfection, and instead look at what you're doing well and how you want to improve.
Beautiful explanation. That ties everything together. And it's very practical. It's a practical way to do things, to the muscle memory, like you talked about. So when you need it, you have it. When you hit the adversity, you have it. Now, in terms of performance, one of my favorite things that you talk about is have one personal goal, one professional goal, and your process goals of scheduling them every day, getting them done before 9 or 10 a.m. as much as you possibly can, and how prioritizing is one of the most important skills of high performers. Can you talk about the 1 to 2 product goals, and then the process goals, scheduling them, getting them done, and prioritization, please?
Yeah, so let me try to be concise with this. Okay, so the big issue that most people are fighting on a regular basis, and I tell you this in teams, in corporations, this is probably the biggest issue I'm seeing, is channel capacity. People are overloading channel capacity. Channel capacity is the brain's ability to focus. It's the bandwidth of the human brain. Okay, now, unfortunately, most people think we have unlimited channel capacity, and we don't. Think about it like your phone. Your brain is a little bit like your phone in this one. If I want to take a photo, the phones are great. You got a camera in there. If I want to take a photo, but my bandwidth or my capacity of the photo album is full, the phone says to me, hey, you can't take any more photos. You've overloaded channel capacity. But if you want to take more, just go in and get rid of the ones that you don't want. Get rid of those ugly photos, the ones that make you look a little heavy, whatever, get rid of, but you get to choose. All right. Now, when we overload our mind's channel capacity, it's the same thing, but we don't get to choose what we delete, what we lose focus on. It just does it. And oftentimes what it does is it overlooks the stuff that takes up a lot of focus, which is generally our most important stuff, and then zeroes in on the things that are more urgent or require less energy focused discipline to complete. Translation, most people on a regular basis are doing a bunch of stuff, but not their most important activities. One of the most impactful quotes I've ever heard, Stephen Covey said this, the second most impactful thing I've ever heard. He said, the noise of the urgent creates the illusion of importance. And that's what Covey was talking about, is we get fooled into thinking the stuff we're putting energy into is the right stuff. But you have to be able to understand the difference between honoring and dishonoring channel capacity is a skill known as prioritizing. See, you can't get everything done. You're not going to. In fact, it's really a mark of success in your career when you get to a point when you can't get everything done. I know when I first started my private practice, shoot, I'd see 1 or 2 clients a day, and then I'd do my 12 to-dos, and then I still have another 6 hours, 5 hours of the day to work. Well, thankfully, I became more successful, and I was seeing so many clients, and then I had so many things to do. There was no way I was going to get everything done. And that's where most people are. But again, most people choose to look at their to-do list and they say, okay, I can get that one done quickly, that one done quickly, that one done quickly. So they start on the urgent stuff, and then they never get to the important stuff. Prioritizing is the exact opposite, that if you can learn to get your most important things done first or early, then it's really, really easy to significantly increase your levels of success. And not only that, but you're going to feel so much better. Let me talk about the biology here, that if you don't start the day with a game plan of prioritized thought and action, I'll say it again. So if I don't start the day, for example, and this is a perfect skill, it's, Organize Tomorrow Today is a technique that I talk about a lot, where you just show up every day and you know what your 3 most important activities are. And 3, there's a reason for 3. It's channel capacity. 3 is kind of that maximum number that you can keep in working memory at all time. So if you show up every day knowing what your 3 most important tasks are, and of the 3, what the single most important task is, and then if I can just early in the day start on that one most important task, what happens in my brain releases neurotransmitters into the bloodstream: dopamine, serotonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Those neurotransmitters make me feel good, gives me energy, and it actually makes mental acuity more possible, makes me smarter. When I push the positive neurotransmitters, I feel better, great energy, momentum, light on my feet, and I'm smarter. And if I do that early, then I get to capitalize on that for the remainder of the day. But here's what normal people do. We start and we're real slow to get engaged. Start on email, stuff that's not quite as important, but maybe feels urgent. The problem is, at even a subconscious level, we know what the most important stuff is. And although we try to make ourselves feel good by getting those urgent things done instead of the important stuff, in your brain, you know you're not getting your important stuff done. And so then what happens is your brain releases another neurotransmitter called cortisol. Cortisol causes feelings of stress, anxiety, fear, anger, depression, guilt. The negative stuff sucks energy and it makes you stupid. So one of the things I really push the people I work with is, hey, look, on a daily basis, know what those 1, 2, at most 3 most important tasks you need to get done are. And then start your day, put 30 minutes early in the calendar where you just only focus on the most important stuff. You do that, and what's going to happen is the rest of the day is going to feel so much better, and your results are going to be so much more significant because you're going to be outperforming people as you focus more and more on the important stuff.
And I know that's at the core of your methodology, as you've told me, to make sure you're getting your daily process goals done. If you want to succeed at anything, personally or professionally, and like you've talked about, have one personal goal, one professional goal, no more, again, because of channel capacity, that you want to focus on those most important tasks, starting with the one most important thing. Yeah, and then you said that's a separator, right, between the best and the rest.
Well, I learned it directly from the greatest coach of all time, John Wooden. This was his number one tenet. And if you look at science, he knew that I don't know, let's say 50 years ago, 60 years ago at this point, probably longer. Okay, well, since then, science has confirmed, yeah, focusing on process or those most important activities is the single most impactful way to create the scoreboard or the results you're looking for. So absolutely, when you talk about process, it's another very, very concrete and effective way of creating prioritized thought and behavior. Again, some people, the confusing part about process is some people show up each day and they don't have the same most important activities. I work with all kinds of CEOs and C-level people, and because they have so many roles and hats they're wearing, it's really difficult to say these are the three, every day it's the same three. Mm-hmm. So that technique of organizing a day, just identify what your three most important tasks are. That could be a process goal. But for me, my process goals are the same pretty much every single day. I know what my most important activities are every single day. And it makes it really easy. I don't have to put a lot of thought into it. I just show up. I already have my game plan in place, and then I can just start attacking right away. And I just, I eat my own cooking. I think you know that. And this has worked out really, really well for my career and my own health and happiness as well. At 52, somebody told me 30 years ago I was going to end up in this chair. I just signed up for that program right away. And a lot of it was right from the heart of process, that prioritize, show up every day and know what your 2 or 3 most important activities are at most, and then just attack. You do that, you get it done. But the power is so much so that the rest of your day is so effective and productive as well.
Oh, beyond powerful. It's a game changer. So if you get a chance, if you're listening, rewind that back, that explanation, because that can change your life personally and professionally. And Dr. Selk, I know we only have a minute or two. Can I give you a few rapid fire questions here?
Absolutely.
Okay. I know you talk about 15 minutes of reading a day, 5 to 15 minutes to keep channel capacity, in check there. Is that something you still recommend? And if so, and also, what are 5 of your favorite personal development books? I know you've read 5, 6, 700 on the subject.
Well, okay. So 5 to 15. No, I want you thinking, how about just 1 minute of reading a day, or just read until you learn something? If that's 30 seconds, stop right there. But I think people, again, we have an abundance of information, a scarcity of action. So 1 minute or less of reading a day is what I'm now prescribing. I don't know about my top 5 best self-help books, but I know I'll give you a couple. Certainly, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It was written in 1936, I think 1936. It doesn't need to be edited. It is so simple. It is so based on human nature and what really works in terms of just connecting with people. That's probably the best book I've ever read. I'm really a big fan of not the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but the audio recording unabridged. That is so powerful. Now I think it's 18 to 20 hours up, but that opened my mind. Stephen Covey, brilliant. He was one of the most brilliant individuals, in my opinion, on the planet. He opened my mind to thinking in a way that I hadn't before. I also am a big fan of Jack Canfield's Success Principles. Those are probably. Again, I didn't really get a connection when I tried to read 7 Habits, but the unabridged audio version with Covey himself narrating was so mind-opening. Those would be my.
Okay. And I know you focus on being on time, timeliness. I know that's really big for you. Start on time, end on time, correct?
Correct. And my good friend Tom Bartow, who was best friends with Coach Wooden, he asked Coach Wooden one time, he said, if you were going to work on discipline or mental toughness in this day and age, what would you do? And Coach Wooden, like a tennis ball coming off the wall, he said, Tom, I would make sure I started and finished meetings on time. So although I just blew it, yesterday, yes, it is so important to me. And I think a lot of it, and I tell my children this, I said, if you're one of those people that shows up late, most people that show up late, they think it's not a big deal, but you must understand it really is to the people who honor time, because I learned from people that show up late, you really can't trust them at their word. Now, maybe that's the only thing you can't trust them at, but how am I supposed to know? And I don't want anybody thinking that about me. If I tell you I'm going to be there at 3:00, you're darn right, I better be there at 3:00. And if I'm not there, I'm not going to make an excuse. So yeah, I think timeliness is really important just for trustworthiness and credibility, even in your own head.
Oh, what a beautiful, that's one of the best, no, that is the best explanation I've ever heard on timeliness. Thank you for that, because it is that important, I believe, as well. Maybe lastly here, you said you believe happiness is the number one measure of success, and maybe we can end it on that one. I know you have to go here.
Yeah, when I was younger and building my career, I used this equation: vision plus integrity equals S, success. V plus I equals S. Vision is knowing where you're trying to go in life, but with clear specifics. Integrity is on a daily basis. Are you behaving in a way that's going to get you where you want to go in life? And if you do those two things, it's going to create success, which, again, early in my career, I put a lot of emphasis on success. But as I realized working with people, and, I've been really fortunate for the last 20, 30 years to help people become more professionally successful. But I've learned, look, if you can learn to be more successful, professionally speaking, but you're not improving your health and happiness along the way, that's not a win. That is a loss. And so even in my own mind, I wanted to change it. I wanted to be very clear. Look, happiness is what we're really going after. And happiness includes elements of your own personal health, your professional success. It doesn't mean you have to have a job outside of the home, but those two pieces are such a big piece of it. So yeah, I'm a really big believer now in focusing on happiness as kind of the holistic picture of health, obviously the emotional component, being happy, and also being the best you can be professionally speaking and achieving those highest levels of performance.
Oh, beautiful. Dr. Selk, where can people find you?
Well, we're not trying to hide. Probably the easiest place, our website, jasonselk.com. We just released, partnered with the guys that created, they were Tiny Prints, and then Shutterfly bought it. I'm so fortunate to have hooked up with these fellas. They are just brilliant at what they do. So we created an app. I think it's the best product I've got out there right now. If you need coaching, it's $199 a year. And look, trust me, that's a heck of a lot less than what it would cost if you hired me in person. And it's a year, it's on your phone. I'm trying to deliver a coaching app where I can get people doing these same things that I do if you hired me for individual coaching or for teams or organizations. And it's on the app, and it's, I don't know, 3, 5, I think at most, maybe 8 minutes a day. Occasionally we have a video that goes a little bit long, but it's a year's worth of content and training. It's levelupgameplan.com. Levelupgameplan.com. I would strongly suggest, if you heard anything you liked today in this podcast, go find that resource. Nobody's, we could have priced this thing so much higher, but everybody involved said, hey, we're just trying to give an extremely low cost alternative to some of the coaching that might be out there for $199 a year, and you can get your money back anytime. No questions asked. We are not looking for money. If it's not a valuable resource for you, just get your money back. But take a look at that dang product, levelupgameplan.com. People are just speaking volumes about how much it's impacting their life. I think that's the best thing I've got out there right now.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And as always, I know that will over deliver, as you always do, as you did today, as your books do, and I'm sure the app does as well. Dr. Selk, thank you for being who you are. Thank you for the masterclass on success and happiness.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing, okay, AJ? I want to give you some credit. I know you're out there busting your butt, trying to help people not only get better professionally, but also doing it the right way, really working on their health and happiness along the way. So I want you better be giving yourself some credit. And I want the listeners, there's all kinds of quotes about this, but Lou Holtz, I like the way Lou Holtz, the great football coach from Notre Dame, said it. He said, human beings were like trees. The second we stop growing, we start dying. Coach Wooden said it this way. He said, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. People on this podcast, there's no doubt you're trying to improve. Be really proud of yourself for the effort to improve. And again, if I would give you just any advice, is Don't worry about what you learned. Here's a quote I've been really using a lot lately. I learned this from a coach named Tracy Steele when I was very, very young. He was a former military guy. He had this hanging on his wall. I gave him credit for this in my very first book, 10-Minute Toughness. He said, to know and to not do is to not yet know. And again, think about that channel capacity. Everybody's trying to do so much and learn so much that it's really stopping us from doing anything of great importance or impactful change. Pick one thing, find one thing that maybe you heard from this resource and put action in it. But main thing, be proud because you're out there trying to get better. I appreciate the time, AJ. Keep doing the work you're doing. If I can help anybody out there, please let me know.
Thank you, sir. Honored to have you. Thanks for all the gems. Thanks for the kind words. Dr. Selk is the best in the world at what he does. Thanks for being here.